Joining us now for more here on Bloomberg TV and radio is our political panel, Maura Gillespie, founder and principal at Blue Stack Strategies and Republican strategist, alongside Democratic strategist Alvin Jordan. And the headlines just keep coming. Welcome to you both. Thanks for being here. A fresh one just as we come back to air. Trump announcing that John Ratcliffe will be the director of the CIA, Maura, of course, after serving as the director of national intelligence during the first Trump administration. Taking collectively with the reporting we've seen on Rubio, though not confirmed yet, some of the others he has chosen for intelligence or national security-oriented, foreign policy-oriented individuals. What do you make of the pick so far?
Well, he's certainly going for people who have expressed their loyalty to him and who will be aggressive in the roles that they're being so far given and assessing what it is our role as the United States is, how much money we are spending, but really what the long-term and short-term strategies are. I think that for the Trump administration, previous and now looking forward to, is really focused on accountability as far as what the plan is to try and shed some transparency and light for the American people so that they understand what's going on. I think a large part of the population maybe felt like they didn't know what the plans were. And so that's essentially what I think he's doing by putting some of these people in those positions.
Alvin, we haven't spoken since the election. I wonder if these names are giving you confidence, giving you hope in what another Trump administration will look like, or keeping you up at night?
Well, for me, I think that it is very much a testament to, at least up until this point, the former president and the president-elect doing exactly what he said he was going to do. And I think regardless of how people might have interpreted that, I think the selections, even those, confirmed and unconfirmed, have been right on point with that. I think he's going to be aggressive as far as, combating and foreign policy positions against China, against Russia. I mean, and he's putting people in place to, I think, hit the ground running, as he said, from day one. And so what that means exactly, to Mara's point, as far as what the plan is maybe still up in the air. But I think as far as the position and the pace, I think these selections are very much painting that picture as far as showing us how aggressive that he'll be.
Well, if you take, though, the reported selection of Marco Rubio, which we have not had officially confirmed by the president-elect yet, though, is that a better scenario that Democrats could have hoped for compared to some of the other names that we had understood could have been in contention for that role?
And 1,000%. Not that, any particular position, especially with the possibilities, none being perfect. I think at least with Rubio, from a Democratic perspective, it is, kind of a more traditionalist as far as policies and politics go, as opposed to some that could be, even more extreme on the MAGA scale, if you want to call it that. And so I think there's a bit of solace that can be taken in that, even though, of course, it's not confirmed yet.
Maura, you're a veteran of Speaker John Boehner's office. Having seen some of these selections, several of them coming out of the House so far, and knowing that Mike Johnson will once again have a razor-thin majority, what do you make of Donald Trump returning to the House of Representatives to fill out some of these jobs? Does he not care, or will it not be a factor in the new Congress?
I'm not sure that it's a I don't care situation, but I do think it's he wants people who have expressed loyalty to him. And so he's picking people that have some institutional knowledge and something to back them up. In most cases, I say there's a couple that I am confused about that have been talked about as positions. But it's important that there are these seats, Elias Stefanik's, Mike Walls. Those are seats that are pretty predominantly Republican. So there isn't as great of a concern about losing those two seats. It still is to be said about what other positions may get filled or maybe tapped, members that may get tapped to be part of the administration that maybe then cause a little bit more for concern. Or in the case of, with Florida, with Rubio, who does DeSantis pick to replace Rubio's seats, and to, if there's been conversation about Kamek being considered, that would then possibly create a problem. But I think primarily they're looking at seats that are safely Republican before hopefully bringing them into the administration.
Well, of course, Maura, tomorrow Donald Trump is going to be speaking with Republicans in the House as he's here in Washington before he heads to the White House to meet with President Biden. Remembering, this is not something we saw in 2020. Donald Trump never extended an invitation like this to Joe Biden when he beat him. How important is that moment going to be tomorrow, as everyone here is promising a peaceful transition of power?
I think it's super important one, that we remind people that didn't happen in 2020. I wish there would be some accountability on the Trump, on the former president and president-elect's part to recognize that this is important, and that a promise that he'll do that going forward, because he obviously can only be president for 4 years, for one more term. And yes, and I appreciate that the Biden administration is doing that and setting up this meeting and having that conversation. It is really important that we have a seamless transition so that there aren't gaps in the different security levels and different things that have to go on. The function of government doesn't just stop over the holidays. It continues on. It is really important, and I'm glad that it's happening. But I do think it's an important opportunity to remind folks why this happens and why it's so critical.
Democrats have been very deliberate in projecting their affinity for a peaceful transfer of power here. We're having Donald Trump over. Is that the message from Joe Biden tomorrow? We're here to do whatever we can to make this work? Or should he remind Americans that it didn't go this way 4 years ago, and that's why he's making a point out of it now?
That'll for sure be a large piece of it, right, is letting America know, hey, we're doing this right. We're showing and shining an example of as far as how these things are supposed to go. And while, everything on the Hill might, be a quote unquote mess right now, I think he, will at least as much as he can try to, let Americans know tomorrow that, things are going the way that they should be. I think he'll give a position, or at least try to guide the conversation as far as how he feels like foreign policy should go relative to, for instance, Ukraine, and as far as, funding and aid. I think he'll try to pace that a bit there and see if, he can, kind of guide the president-elect in that way, and then we'll see how it goes. But for sure, he'll let Americans know that he's doing it the right way.
Well, as we consider foreign policy, Joe Biden might have some final trips here coming up as president as well. The G20's in Brazil next week. Also, he, according to the White House press secretary today, is still planning to go to Africa before his administration is over, which is obviously just 2 months from now. Alvin, what realistically is there that can be accomplished in this final period?
I mean, to be completely honest, just trying to leave it as best that he possibly can. At this point, he's still the president, and there's a full agenda, I'm sure, even as you mentioned. But by and large, I mean, you see so much being made in the news of positioning for the Trump administration, and I see and I believe that, so much will be dictated as people try to position for January. So I think the president will do his best to kind of go on his goodbye campaign and be as diplomatic as possible, which is what you would expect from Joe Biden.
Be interesting to see if we get any executive orders on the way out as well that might seek to protect what has been done. Coming up, the battle over the Senate Republican leadership.